we go. Are we live?
Yep.
All right. So, awesome. Welcome back, everybody. This is the second webinar in the Hackusama series. Today, we're going to be talking about a few different things, but just in general, the hackathon has been going fantastic. We're excited to see all the action and just having everybody in the pool, having everybody participate. So, why don't we kick it off with the agenda? Today, we're going to be giving you sort of a Hackusama overview, what was going on over the past week and a half, how many participants do we have, where they're from, and so on. We have a new Discord channel, a Discord server, so we're going to introduce that a bit. We're going to talk about a few the community partners. We're going to introduce the ambassador program, the Web3 Foundation grants, and the highly anticipated UNICEF presentation on what UNICEF does with blockchain. So today, you're going to have three people present to you. It's going to be myself and Dan. We're both from the Web3 Foundation, working on the Proton community side, as well as Ariana Fowler. She is the UNICEF representative that we have. She's working on the blockchain strategy for UNICEF. So really excited to hear what she's going to say about UNICEF. So to kick it off, we have a staggering 310, I think I checked it before, 314 or 15 participants in Hackusama, which is incredible. So a huge thumbs up to everybody. Also a huge thank you to everybody who's been sort of driving growth and bringing the word out, taking the word out. We've got a bunch of community partners that we're going to talk about later on who help us a lot. But these numbers, which is fantastic, and we're very, very excited to be working with everybody else. So from these 310 participants, we do want to give you a little bit of data, what where these people are from, what they do, and so on. So we're actually covering most of planet Earth, really. We're on 6 continents, excluding Antarctica. Unfortunately, nobody from Antarctica has joined. But we are working with people in 52 countries. So participants come from 52 different countries. In general, the top 5 are the United States, India, China, UK, and Canada. We have a huge representative from India and China. We've got a few community partners there who help us out a lot, and it's just great to see this massive diversity. Now, what is maybe not that much represented fairly, to be honest, is the South American community, because if we actually went back and looked at South America as a whole, and they would be ranking very high up, but since it's split amongst many different countries, none of them has made it up in the top 5 list. But just to let you know that we are nicely diversified and decentralized since we're in this industry. Now, what I wanted to bring to everybody's attention is that we've got 83 participants who are looking for a team. Now, I'm highlighting this because it's really important that everybody who's participating, who's thinking about building something, please go in the dev post page and click on participants. On the left-hand side, you can actually filter people who already have a team, who decided to work alone, or who are looking for a team. Now, I'm bringing this up because before this call, I actually scrolled through the list of these 83 participants that are looking for a team. And I got to tell you, you've got people there that have low-level Rust knowledge, extensive knowledge of low-level blockchain stuff, as well as front-end people, UI, UX people who can help out with coming together with a beautiful design. You've got JavaScript people, HTML. It's just a very diversified group of people, and I would really implore everybody, have a look at that list. Maybe there's somebody who you could team up with. Maybe there's somebody who you can find that really nicely fits into what your plan is. So, but in that respect, we actually started a new Discord server, and the idea here is, well, we got a ton of feedback saying, there's Telegram, there's Raya, there's this forum that we have. There's a ton of different channels that we can use, but there's no dedicated channel only for Hackusama. So we actually wanted to open the Discord server before this, but we sort of decided not to. But based on this feedback, we went ahead and did kick it off. We've got, I think it's 50 or 60 people that already joined. So please go ahead and join this. I think it's a great community. You get to either find a team, talk about what you're doing, just introducing yourself. It's just a really good way to get into the community of these 300-something participants. So in that respect, 310 participants, all of these countries, all of these continents, we wouldn't be here without these community partners that we have. And they really range from full-fledged companies like Ledger down to some student societies and so on and so on. And so on each of these webinars, we do take time and introduce them a tiny bit. And the reason for that is because we wouldn't be here without them. I mean, we would, but the scale would be much smaller. So today, up first is George Brown College, and George Brown actually has a three-semester-long specifically made blockchain program that, as far as I know, was the first certification program in a North American college, specifically focusing on blockchain. And the Web3 Foundation has actually been, we have a long-standing relationship with George Brown College, and it's just fantastic to see them as one of the community partners. They help us promote stuff on their end. We work together on joint initiatives and so on. So it's awesome to have you here. The next one would be KCL Blockchain. So for those who don't know, KCL stands for King's College London, and KCL Blockchain is a student society there. We've also, with them, similar to George Brown, we have a long-standing relationship. But this is, as I mentioned, we're working with full-fledged companies as well as with student societies, and KCL definitely fits that profile. And it's just great to see, we get this nice diversified population of different kinds of people, from hardcore low-level engineers to students to you name it, essentially. So KCL, big thumbs up to you. Thank you very much for all the support. KCL, as a student society focusing on blockchain, they don't just focus on the technology, but also how the technology relates to law, to business, and so on. So doing fantastic work in London. And the final one today is Persistence. So Persistence is actually a company based in India, and they are really focusing on bringing real-world assets onto the blockchain. But what's more important to this discussion is that they are a fantastic community partner. They help us spread the word in India. You've seen the numbers. India is very high up in the top 5. I think it's 47 participants so far from India. So it's just great to see all that drive and all that persistence coming out of India. So thank you very much, guys, for supporting us. And now I'm actually going to hand it over to Dan. Dan is going to be taking you through the Ambassadors Program as well as through the Web3 grants, which are two very important initiatives that we've got going on. So Dan, take it away.
Cool. Thanks, Urban. So like Urban said, I'm Dan Reeser. I'm also on the same team as Urban on the community and growth team at the Web3 Foundation. I'll quickly run you through a couple of things that you may have seen in some of the hackathon materials this week. So one being the Ambassador Program that we're very passionate about for the Polkadot and Kusama ecosystem. And then second, Web3 grants, which you probably saw in the prizes for first and second place in the 2 categories. So I'll walk you through both of those right now. So to start with the Ambassador Program, this was a program started by Chris Hutchinson at the Web3 Foundation, I think around February 2019. And over time, we've been able to kind of accumulate an amazing kind of cross-continental group of people. So at the current moment, as of today, we've got around 248 ambassadors in 45 or more countries. So we need to get a little celebration together for the 250 mark here in a little bit. But the cool thing about it is it really doesn't lean one way or the other in terms of technical talent or non-technical individuals who may be more interested in business or hosting meetups or helping with translations, graphic design, or what have you. So no matter who you are, what your background is, we have kind of a range of people from university level to CEOs, and like I said, from developers to completely non-technical people like myself. The way the program works is there's an application process, and what we'll do is we'll have monthly calls with people after they're onboarded to kind of get people to know others in the community. And we really see this as the kind of absolute core of the community. And what this slide is meant to show here is on the left, like I mentioned, non-technical individuals. A lot of times people come in and say, they start apologizing, like, I'm sorry, I don't know how to, I don't know how to write code. How can I help out? Here's just a few examples of some really cool initiatives that people have started. At the top, Zoe in San Francisco, she did a meetup recently with the CEO of Parity Technologies, Utah, on our crowdcast here actually, and gave a great kind of overview of what Parity is focusing on in Polkadot. We also have a pretty burgeoning community in South America, and we're starting to expand into Spanish language presentations. So we had like Roberto from Colombia and Wimel from Spain give a great presentation on what Polkadot is in Spanish. And then on the right, I wanted to highlight, these are kind of the people who have been, some of them have been in the community for a while and are actually day to day spending their time building projects on Polkadot. So you've got UseTech in Russia, Plasm in Japan, our friends Moonbeam in Boston. We've even got an individual in Sao Paulo, Brazil, who's on the Kusama Council now. So he's helping out with, voting on governance proposals, things like that. Subsocial out of Ukraine. And then cool story from kind of an example of what the ambassador program can lead to. We had an individual, Ricardo, from Mexico City, and he was hosting meetups, hosting developer workshops. He was technical. And he impressed everyone so much that now he lives in Berlin and works for Parity as a developer on their team. So it can lead to a lot of different things, but it's a great way to meet people and kind of get into the core of the community. And hey, Alex. Next slide, Urban. And Urban, while I'm talking, if you can paste the link to the ambassador program application, that would be awesome as well. So now let's shift gears a little bit and get into the Web3 Foundation grants. So what we're offering as part of the hackathon is kind of a fast track to kind of a conversation with the grants team at Web3 around your project, maybe the parachain that you built in the hackathon or a different tool that you built in the open hack category. But we just wanted to give you a quick overview of what that really means. So the Web3 Foundation Grants Program is really meant to fund projects from the community that focus on Polkadot or Kusama or Substrate through two different primary means of funding. So the General Grants Program being option number 1, and the Open Grants Program being option number 2. So as you can see here, teams who choose to go these two different routes will apply through the program. If it's the General Grants Program, there's a little bit more rigor and structure, but you can get funding up to $100,000 through that program, which requires an application and conversations with the grants team and so on. And then the second one, the Open Grants Program, is actually a little bit more new. And this was created to kind of have an open process through GitHub for funding of a little bit of a smaller scale of up to $30,000 for that. In addition, a couple more bullet points here. The Bounties program is something else that you may see on Gitcoin or other similar platforms here over the next few years. We actually just announced a partnership and integration with Gitcoin, so we'll be there hopefully quite often, offering bounties. And then the Treasury, many of you may have heard about the Kusama Treasury. There's quite a bit of funding there available for people who submit project proposals, even things on the creative side. Like we just funded a documentary out of Portugal with another ambassador, Miguel, which was funded from the Kusama Treasury. And then in a similar manner on Polkadot, Polkadot will have a treasury which will be there to help fund and grow ecosystem projects. Next slide. So I won't go through all the details here. This is really meant to show you that we've had quite a bit of submissions, and this slide is actually slightly even under where the numbers are now, but we've had well over 100 grants projects that have been funded, many of which have actually completed all their milestones and gotten kind of the work out there in the wild. And on the right here, it's actually pretty relative to the hackathon that we have going on now, because you may actually recognize a lot of these different, categories of projects, because this is a lot of the things that we've given as ideas within the hacker guide for Hackusama. Things like developer tooling, for example, UI for governance or for staking is another thing that we've mentioned for Hackusama, but just a few examples here of what has been funded in the past. And then this slide is really just meant to illustrate the different categories, use cases, industries that have been funded by the Web3 Foundation grants program. And there's actually a pretty extensive article about this that we just recently kind of published around when we hit our kind of 100 grants milestone. But this is really, it's pretty exciting to look through all the different industries like gaming, finance, building bridges to other ecosystems like Interlace, building a bridge to Bitcoin. We've got another team in the process of working with an Ethereum bridge. So just an example, again, of the different types of projects that can be funded through this program. If you're interested, one option obviously is to build something in Hackusama, get first or second, and then we'll get you through that process. Otherwise, I have these links pulled right here. Paste in the chat. So these are the two links for the open grants process and the general grants program. If you do have questions or want to apply, the email's right there, grants@web3.foundation. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Ariana. I'll send you an invite to come onto the screen, but we're super excited. I actually have been looking forward to this since I found out that UNICEF and Ariana were going to be speaking. So really excited to hear what Ariana has to say, and I will hand it over to you once we get you onto the screen.
Yeah, so guys, just keep in mind that Q&A is encouraged. If you have questions, not just for Ariana, but any kind of stuff that me and Dan mentioned regarding ambassadors, the Web3 grants, anything, just make sure to post a question. And we're gonna try to answer as much. So, Ariana, it's awesome to have you here. Go ahead.
Cool. Okay, let me share my screen really quickly. Cool. Okay. And then go into presenter mode. Great. Okay, so I'm assuming that this is working.
That's great.
Okay, great. I've never presented actually in Crowdcast. There's been so many different platforms. Every digital conference uses a different one. But thank you guys for inviting UNICEF, Innovation, and myself to come and chat. It's always exciting to take our work into new spaces and to enlighten people as to what we do and who we are, and figure out ways that we can engage with different ecosystems. So my name is Ariana, and I work on UNICEF's blockchain team. And so today I'll be talking a bit about UNICEF Innovation, about what we do with blockchain, and then about our venture fund, because we actually are looking to invest in blockchain startups right now. So a lot of exciting things happening. But first, for just a bit of framing to the entire conversation, I wanted to run through some global challenges. So if you aren't aware, UNICEF is the children's agency of the United Nations. And so on a daily basis, we are working to ensure that the lives of children and young people and mothers are looked out for amidst a crazy world. So we are experiencing rapid urbanization globally, and this comes with a whole slew of infrastructure issues, as we're seeing right now, global health and pandemic-related issues. We have a global displacement issue, global refugee crisis that is continuing to happen. This could be forcible migration, this could be due to climate change, but people are on the move. We are seeing young people right now. Actually, this is the first time in the United Nations history that this many children are out of school. But not only are children out of school due to the COVID crisis, but we are finding that children and young people are actually leaving school unprepared for the jobs of tomorrow. So there's some work to do there. And then we're facing global emergencies constantly. UNICEF, I think last year the number was maybe 300 global crises that we had responded to in over, I think, 160 countries, I believe. So we have a changing world. There's a lot going on, I'm sure, as all of you know. And where there are also big opportunities for innovation, there's also widening inequality. And so this is really referring to what is known as the digital divide. So we are seeing lots of people come online, but as we are seeing lots of people come online, we are seeing really large discrepancies between people who, maybe make lots of money or are innovating really rapidly, and people who are still using, basic cell phones as opposed to smartphones, AI, things like that. Here we go. So about UNICEF, we have 190 offices. We have an operating budget of about $5.5 billion USD per year, and this is really going to emergencies in the field, schools in the field, and providing essential needs. We have about 12,000 staff, and around 88% of those are in the field, over 70 years old. We've been around for a bit, since the beginning of the United Nations. Fun fact, we used to be the largest purchaser of vaccines, but there's now a global alliance for vaccines. We still purchase quite a bit, and we do purchase the most pencils in the world because kids need pencils in schools. So UNICEF Innovation really is a small team within our headquarters office that is working to address some of the issues that I previously mentioned in new ways using emerging and frontier technologies. So as a team, we identify emerging technologies and look at where we can collaborate with the private sector. We invest in early stage solutions, and then we work to actually scale proven solutions to be used not only by UNICEF, but by some of our partners around the world. So I'll jump right into our blockchain team. So UNICEF actually has been experimenting with blockchain for several years now. And we are viewing blockchain and crypto through really three main lenses. So looking at innovative financing models, of course, using crypto. And then in terms of blockchain, how can we improve the efficiency and transparency of such a large organization such as the UN? Like you can imagine 12,000 staff, that's a lot of processes and paperwork, and there's a lot of things flowing across borders. And so how can we do our work more efficiently so we can save some of those costs and time and actually allocate them towards where it's needed most? And then our last bucket is really creating open source digital public goods. So yesterday we actually just in a really long blog post announced our Digital Public Goods Alliance. So I'm not sure if anyone from our team is on, but you can drop the blog in the chat and people can read about that. So these are our focus areas. So we have our innovation fund and our crypto fund. We have internal prototypes, and then we also actually do a lot of learning, which can look like a hackathon. It can look like internal UN trainings, and actually interagency blockchain learnings. So this is an overview of our team's blockchain history. So as I mentioned, we've been in it for a few years. If you didn't know, not many people do know, so we're trying to get the word out there. Actually, our first prototype was back in 2015. But really, our full team as a blockchain team was established in late 2018. So we made our first investment in 2016 into Ampli, which is a company in South Africa, and was around education credentials, and actually, tying funding that the government was giving per child for attendance using blockchain. We started conversations about the crypto fund in early 2017, and I'll get to the crypto fund in a bit, but because it is such a large organization, you have to start some of these conversations around innovation pretty early. So we've been having them for about 2 years before we launched the crypto fund in 2019. We actually ran a crypto mining campaign with UNICEF France, which is our French fundraising arm, called Game Changers, and there's quite a bit written about that you can go and look into. But this, people were using their, excess data and servers to mine crypto for UNICEF. We launched our Surge series in 2018. So this is our learning event and hackathon series around blockchain geared at young people in our program countries. So UNICEF program countries are basically where we work. So we have countries that do our fundraising. Those are typically, in North America, Western Europe, the richer countries, and then the other countries, we call them program countries. And so we launched Surge in several countries. We had Mexico, we did Cape Town in 2018. Which was very exciting. And then in 2019, we had a few more events. In late 2018, early 2019, we actually announced our first cohort of blockchain companies through the UNICEF Venture Fund. And this is a picture of them. They all flew to New York to do an in-person workshop, which was very exciting. But the Venture Fund, while it's been around for a few years, this was the first time we had a dedicated blockchain portfolio. We also kicked off a project with our Kazakhstan country office called Digicus, which is around smart contract and vendor procurement processes. And so this was, again, more of the internal back office operation, transparency, and efficiency use case that I talked about earlier. And that project actually is looking at going through another iteration, which is really exciting. And then actually around ETH New York, we put out actually a bounty to see if we could create a prototype using blockchain for internet connectivity. So we have a project called Project Connect that tracks the which schools in the world are connected to the internet and not. And then we thought, how cool would it be if we could use blockchain to actually have a real-time tracker of the internet connectivity speeds. And so that prototype launched in 2019. And then in late 2019, we announced our crypto fund. So we are the first entity in the UN to actually accept, hold, and distribute cryptocurrency, which was exciting. We announced that at DevCon in Osaka. So our venture fund, similar to a lot of we do a lot of firsts at UNICEF Innovation for the UN. So this is the first venture capital vehicle within the UN. And we invest in companies that are open source, scaling, what, again, we describe as digital public goods. And then we also invest, in entrepreneurs themselves. So when I mentioned that we work in frontier tech areas, these are the kind of areas that we consider. And this is just a bit of a visual explaining, like, there's incredible and immense value and potential in frontier technology areas. And there also is a huge opportunity and need in emerging markets. So we want to be the middle of this Venn diagram. Our fund has made 98 investments in 56 countries, which is pretty exciting. So we invest in startups and program countries, but then we actually also work with some of our country offices who want to do prototypes themselves. And this is just a bit of our thesis. If we take a startup, we invest in them. The startups have to agree to become open source, and then we move them to our Digital Public Goods Alliance and actually scale them so anyone around the world can access the incredible work that these startups have been doing. The crypto fund, as I mentioned, first of its kind in the UN system, so we can accept, hold, and distribute Bitcoin and Ether through our venture fund. So you can think of the crypto fund as sort of under the umbrella of the venture fund. So when startups apply to our venture fund, they can receive funding in fiat as well as in crypto. And this is actually a really exciting prototype for us. Again, it's never been done. It took 2 years of conversations and work, and we're very proud of it. So really, with the crypto fund, we are working to show the UN that a digitally financed future is possible. And the idea, is that we learn by doing, and then the learnings that we have from the crypto fund and from some of our other experiments can also maybe be scaled and adopted by other parts of the UN. So our crypto fund has made 11 investments in 8 countries. So our first 3 investments were announced at DevCon, and we actually just made 8 new investments just a few weeks ago, and we announced it, which was very cool. It was one of the largest public sector movings of crypto on record, which was very exciting. So again, it's in Bitcoin and in ETH. So in June, we did our second round, and these are some of the countries that received the funding. And so the companies that received the funding. And so the startups that received the second round of funding were existing portfolio companies. And so we put out a call to all of the companies that had received funding, whether they were blockchain companies or not. They could be AI companies, AR, VR, really any of those frontier technologies, and ask them would they take crypto? And we actually had quite a few apply and say, yeah, like we're ready. And from that, we selected 8 to fund. And so they received that crypto. And again, it was another experiment showing the UN that you can move money very quickly to projects that are on the ground. So we have 4 data science companies that have received crypto, 2 XR VR companies that have received crypto, and then 2 blockchain companies. So these are just a sampling of some of the projects that have received funding through the crypto fund. As I mentioned, they also received previously funding through our venture fund. So how does a crypto fund work? So startups apply to the crypto fund, which is applying to the venture fund. Donors support the fund. So our first anchor donor was the Ethereum Foundation. And we're always looking for donors. So if you're excited to share some crypto that can be shared to companies, let us know. But then these were the first 3 companies that received crypto from us. And then what we do with companies that we invest in, we work on product development, we give strategic support, and we also provide programmatic support. So when you come into our portfolio, you have access to our networks, our mentors, and then, we have a blockchain team. We have a 6-person blockchain team, including developers and product designers. So you have access to that as well. Who do we invest in? Companies that are registered in a program country, companies that are interested in working on open source technologies, that have existing prototypes, and that are wanting to impact the lives of children. So if any of those sound interesting to you, I did drop the link in the chat earlier. We have opened another round of funding. Oh, and here it is. If you're interested in receiving funding, we are going to be giving USD and crypto. And so the 3 areas that we are focused on for this next round of funding are finance, connect, and empower. So the finance, what we're looking for is solutions that, could be DeFi, could be just around having people, onboard better to wallets, could be just exposing people as how to use crypto and how to participate in a blockchain-based financial future. The next one is connect. So this is any kind of solution that is looking to really emphasize those transparency and accountability pieces. So this may look like supply chain or contract management, but really anything that facilitates a more transparent marketplace and move of information. And then lastly, empower. So any kind of solution that is looking to restore agency back to individuals. So this could be around data privacy. This could be around decision making, such as a DAO. But really anything that returns, again, as we all know in blockchain, power back to the user and to communities. So again, here is more information on the fund. The next round does close on the 26th of July. So just a couple more weeks to apply. Here is more information. Here's an email. And I know I breezed through that, but I kind of like to leave more time at the end for questions. So I will pause here and see if there are questions. If there's anything in the presentation you would like me to go back to or emphasize, I'm happy to do so. And I don't know if I can't see questions, so I don't know if someone wants to moderate.
Yep, I can moderate. There's a question box down here in the bottom. And thanks, by the way, Ariana. That was a great presentation.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of questions myself. If anyone has questions, feel free to type in the ask a question box here at the bottom. And I'm sure Urban has questions as well.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Ariana, awesome. Thank you very much for being here and taking us through this. I did not know that UNICEF deploys capital so extensively, so that's really good to hear. And I think it's relevant to the discussion that we have around Hackusama and all of these hackathons going on, right? I'd really encourage anybody participating in a hackathon around this, think of your project as more long-term, because one day a person like Ariana might come around and say, hey, you know that project that was, supposed to be open source for Hackusama, why don't you take that and we can, apply a funding round to it. So that's really, really cool to see. I think you said, Ariana, there's up to 100K funding. Is this like equally spread? Do you take equity? Can you tell us a little bit more about
Yeah,
this?
totally. So they're non-equity investments. So really for us, our equity is that you are creating an open source digital public good. So for us, the real value is having amazing, successful, real projects that then can be made available to the masses. So that's really all that we require when applying. So you have to be in a program country, which means you can think of that as like an emerging or developing economy. You can Google like UNICEF program countries, and then be either currently open source or willing to open source. And then a working prototype, just so we can see, it's hard to apply with the concept, as a fund, we want to invest in real solutions. And so if you just kind of apply with the concept, it's a bit hazy to know if that is a worthy investment. However, if you can show either, you have a product that's actually out in the field, that you have real users, or you have a functioning prototype maybe on a test net, that you have a compelling, argument that you can go out and get users, then we want to see it.
Sweet. So I think we actually have a question from Alex. Is a transparent communication platform a good candidate for UNICEF funding?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. So I know I mentioned the 3 kind of categories. So finance, connect, and empower. Those are really tied to our GIGA initiative, which is an initiative actually to get every school in the world connected to the internet. So I mentioned Project Connect. And Project Connect is just the mapping piece of this bigger initiative to get everyone internet access. And so the financing, connect, and empower piece of what we're looking to invest in, it's all kind of like a puzzle, right? So we're looking for solutions that we think actually can be combined into this broader initiative to actually help schools get connected to the internet, and then help people actually, with this Digital Public Goods Alliance, once kids have access to the internet, then they can, learn how to code and then go in and be able to access this, giant repo and then be able to create solutions for themselves. So any kind of solution that you think would contribute to, again, like a more equitable environment for internet access, or having people, again, be able to be more empowered with how they use the internet, is a good use case for us.
So people take note. Arbiana is actually giving you extremely good ideas on what to build. But Arbiana, I do want to drill down on that a little bit, right? Because you've been at UNICEF for some time now. You've gotten to speak to different people. You have this amazing knowledge and introspection of blockchain, and you combine that with UNICEF's mission and vision. Give us like 1, 2, maybe 3 specific problems that you want to see addressed with blockchain, or that somebody could come in and say, this is a great solution for this specific problem. Is there something like that, like on the top of your mind?
Totally. So I would say, so there's kind of different levels of solutions, right? So there's the solutions that I think, if we're thinking of like the internet example, if there is a way that someone could work on a solution. So I mentioned the speed tracking of the internet connectivity, but what if there is a way to create a smart contract enabled agreement between an internet service provider and a school and a government, and using that speed tracker and using smart contracts in crypto, you can actually distribute the funding based upon the performance of the internet connectivity. That would be a really great way to use all the different pieces of blockchain from an infrastructure level to actually facilitate access. So that's kind of on the infrastructure side of things. And then I would say on the, the user side of things, or if you're thinking more in terms of, like UNICEF and like kids and young people and people on the ground and people in the countries that we support, there's a lot of work to be done in terms of making blockchain actually accessible to those people. And whether that's, easier wallet onboarding and key management, whether that is making DAOs digestible, right? Like, what does it actually mean to like make decisions using blockchain in a community? And like, what's a really easy interface to do that? Or how can you use blockchain with a tool that's maybe voice enabled? Because not everyone may have a smartphone, so perhaps if you can have a way to just use either like basic phone features, like what could you do with that? So I think there's on the user side of things, thinking about some of the constraints, whether it's like low bandwidth or like not dumb phones, but not phone, like a basic kind of SMS enabled and phone call phone. Like what could you do with that? And then also, I think if we want to go a bit like higher order, bounties and Gitcoin are great examples, of developers getting together and solving problems. But how do we translate that maybe to, regular people, right? Like non-technical users who want to complete micro tasks that can be blockchain enabled in a way, again, that is digestible, or that can be rewarded. What if, you can create some sort of like token or token economic model that rewarded, physical behaviors, and that could translate to, cashing out at, at different vendors. Like these aren't necessarily new concepts, but I actually, I've been working in this space for 3 years now, and previously was at Princeton's Summer Social Impact team. And like, I would say for the past 3 years, I still am struggling to see really strong examples, like more than just a handful of really strong examples of people making it user-friendly at the end, like on, the last mile kind of thing, which it's hard. Like these technologies are still being developed, right? So it's hard to, decide if you want to be at the protocol level and the infrastructure level, if you want to jump, immediately to like getting it in someone's hands. But I think there are ways that we can do it right now that I would like to see a bit more of personally.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great answer, but it's complex, right? There's no simple answer to that. Absolutely.
You basically just wrote up a whole guide for another hackathon.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned, I mentioned some of our learning series, but I think it could be really interesting, with our Surge learning series and hackathon. Our most recent one was in Bangkok last year, and it was around financial inclusion. We worked with Omisego, Band Protocol, Status, like a bunch of companies around, what would a blockchain-based financial inclusion tool look like for young people in Thailand. And that was a really fun hackathon that we kind of got things across the board from like just fundraising to, actually distributing funds. Like every child is born with a crypto wallet and gets funds at birth, and then it's released at like certain milestones, and like really, kind of out of the box thinking in terms of how to actually make people empowered with crypto. But I definitely think, there's way more opportunities in some of these hackathons to not only have just like a social impact track, because sometimes it bothers me because it kind of relegates like billions of people in the world to like, oh, this is the like poor people track. It's like, no, there's like billions of people around the world, and there's more mobile phones in Africa per capita than anywhere else. And so it's like, what if we just actually integrated some of those problems into like mainstream tracks of hackathons, and just actually started like hacking on, these issues and didn't think of them as like side hustles. That's kind of I'm gonna get off my sandbox.
I think we all agree on that, right? It's a tough sort of situation where you need to guide interest, and obviously there's people from not necessarily think of solving a problem, or might not even have the knowledge of solving a problem in Kenya or I don't know, Serbia, for instance, or whatever you want to call it. But we do have one more question, Aviana. And people seem to be very interested in the crypto fund. So can an application from an individual be accepted for the UNICEF fund? So is it geared towards LLCs? Is it for companies? Is it for individuals?
Yeah, so you technically have to be registered as a private company. So if you want to register yourself as a quick little company, totally fair and fine. We actually did a webinar this morning, and one of our fund team members, mentioned like when you apply, so by the 26th, you don't necessarily have to have that legal entity registration, but if you get shortlisted to make it to the next round, so say in a month and a half from now, we want you to have that registration moving and ready to go by that point. So depending where you are, and depending on the timeline it takes for you to get set up as a legal entity, it's sort of like a contractual requirement that we can't just give money to individuals. You have to be a legal company.
Yeah.
Not a company.
Is there also a incubation program attached to this, or is it purely a fund?
So there is. So it's a 1 year kind of cohort model, and there are check-ins like quarterly and at the halfway mark check-ins. With the fund team, so they provide all different kinds of mentorship, and then you actually have like a bigger ecosystem of mentors and advisors. So these could be open source mentors, business model mentors, product design, software development, blockchain development mentors, and so those kind of come at like a need basis, because not everyone may need open source mentorship, or not everyone may need product design mentorship, or figuring out how to do user testing. So the fund team will work with you. You make a work plan once you get accepted into the cohort, and from that work plan, they work with you to kind of find what support would help you best. But so it's not like a formal incubation program with a curriculum by any means. It's tailored to the specific companies, but we do want you to be successful so that when you graduate from the 1 year, we can either help you maybe find follow-on funding elsewhere. Our team is actually exploring what it would look like to have, a separate fund for follow-on funding for projects that we think are successful. So there is some love that's poured in over that year to make sure that you can meet your goals.
Awesome, thanks. Dan, any questions? I'm sorry, I've been hogging this conversation.
Okay.
It's just wonderful to talk to you. I've been very insightful.
Yeah, so at a higher level with UNICEF, could you just talk a little bit more about where the funding comes from? I know with the crypto fund, it's coming, you mentioned like Ethereum Foundation, maybe others, but could you talk a little bit broader, like just for our understanding of how UNICEF works at the kind of top level?
Totally. So at the UNICEF level, like the big UNICEF level of, whenever we're buying the most pencils in the world, like that funding mainly comes from governments. And so there are some private sector, like large corporate donors. So there's kind of like three categories. There's like governments and, not private sector entities. And then there are like the private sector entities, and then there's individuals. So we can have big corporate donors and partners. We work a lot with Microsoft as a partner, or Google or Facebook. I think we've had partnerships with like Red Hat in the past. For our innovation team, some of those partnerships can look like money, or they can also look like in-kind donations. So it could be, server space, or it could be, again, mentorship. It could be, any kind of service that they provide that we can use. We have a data science team called Magic Box, and they work a lot with, like, they did a lot of the modeling around Ebola. They've done like COVID modeling, and they work, with internet service providers and different like mobile providers to actually access their data, or like flight tracker companies and things like that to be able to like access mobility data. So that might not look like cash, but it is, an asset that we can use to like improve our services. For the fund, it's a pooled fund. Again, so it could be, the overall venture fund is $30 million. And that could come from country donors, like major country donors that want to support innovation work, or private companies, or large single donors.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. And on the crypto fund side, could you give maybe, I know you mentioned like the three kind of main categories that you're looking to fund at the current moment, but could you give any more advice to anyone who might be applying, like what kind of aspects of the team or the business model or the idea, like what do you really look for when deciding that?
Totally. So again, I would say like one of the biggest things, because I reviewed some applications from our previous rounds, and we really want to see either a working prototype or a product. There needs to be something real, which I think is like a crypto blockchain company thing across the board, right? And we saw this a few years ago with the ICO craze. But I think a lot of times like great concepts, need to be actioned. And so, have something that we can go in and see, because you will, I think it's the third round maybe, that there's actual demos. So if you can have a working demo, then even better if you can show that you have tested it, that there are users, and maybe here's how many users and what you learned from it, and users in different regions, things like that. That shows us that it's moving, and it's like alive. I think in terms of the team, you don't have to be an experienced founder is great. I think this goes for really any kind of fund that you're applying to, especially like the pre-seed or seed stage, which is like where we're more focused on. Like it is the early stage companies. You may be a first-time founder, which is fine, but if you have no developers, for example, on your team, but you want to do a blockchain, project, that may be tricky. Do you have a plan to hire developers? Like, how does that work? Or, is your team only developers and has no one doing like maybe the project management, or no one crafting the business model, and none of you have business experience? that's kind of challenging to then have a successful business, right? Because ultimately you are a company and you will need to make money at some point. So I think there needs to be a balance in terms of the team. I think also with really any fund, we want to work with teams and founders that are passionate, authentic, that are well-intentioned, that are nice and fun to work with, right? Like you don't really want to be a pain or be, angry or ungrateful. Like that can be challenging to work with. So just like good energy, good vibes. And then in terms of a business model, this is tricky, especially around something being open source. And this is why we provide open source mentorship, because you have to kind of figure out like what is your special sauce, and like the open source business model is a very particular one. And so I would say we're not focused on that, but we're a little less focused on that as opposed to something like the prototype or the concept or the product. Like that really for us is like what is the most promising thing to look at.
Okay. And just going off of that, you've talked a lot about like wanting to see a real product and a prototype. And I know you mentioned you had one cohort, and then the second cohort just came out. Could you maybe give an example of like one project or two projects that you're super excited about and like have users have a working product and what that kind of looks like?
Totally. So I can share, or Moran, I see Moran's in the chat, my teammate Moran. So Moran can probably share like the graduation or 6-month update of our cohort, our previous cohort. But we had a wide range of projects ranging from Statwig, which is a supply chain company out of India. And so again, like they do, they were looking at like food supply chain, food delivery supply chain, or, like vaccine and like medical supply chain. So that's a very tangible thing. And they do have real users. They have government contracts. Another one is OS City. And so they actually have a ton of government contracts in Latin America around certifications. So that could be for a university doing graduation certificates on the blockchain, or that could be for a government doing like your alcohol licensing for a restaurant or a bar. And so they've had a lot of movement. We had another one that was looking at impact investing. And so again, putting in benchmarks and thresholds that are, smart contract enabled. So funders and donors can see when projects are meeting their milestones and release funds that way. So those are a few of the examples that we've seen come through. But yeah, Moran's dropping more.
Yeah, we'll have to check out that blog post. Cool.
Sweet. I think then let's wrap it up at this point. I think there's no more questions, and we've exhausted Ariana. Cool.
Sorry.
A little choppy.
Yeah, a little choppy, Herman.
Maybe hand it over.
You said to wrap it up. So
yeah, go ahead and wrap it up.
Ariana, thanks a lot for the presentation. I know I learned a ton about UNICEF and what you're doing with the crypto fund. We'll definitely be sure to check out some of these blog posts, and I think some of the people on the call may even be applying in the next round. So really appreciate your time and your support, and everyone in the hackathon. We appreciate your involvement, and look forward to seeing what you come up with your team in the next 5 weeks. So everyone have a good weekend, and thanks for joining us here.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.